Alright, we have been looking at this chart since last Thursday. Last Thursday Bible study, and we introduced the cycle of the Antichrist to coordinate. And we explained why he has to be born last year. And so we know the 7-time cycle that we already experienced. And we have like from 2012, and you have 3 dates in which you can look at the cycles beginning. So they are like 3 cycles close to one another within the same year taking place. And something always is significant at the end of a cycle or right in the middle of the cycle. Just as in the time of tribulation, in the middle of the cycle was a mid-tribulation rapture of Enoch and Elijah, and also of the 144,000. It is interesting. Now this chart, I'll make sure that Eddie also has it. You got a lot of files by now, right? So by 2055, you will have lots of files. Let's see whether you're still alive. Okay. Jen and you will both live quite closely together, and you almost like go home together kind of thing. Yeah, you're really soulmates, both of you. Yeah, so don't worry about being alone and no one wash your clothes. Which is the only benefit that I heard that he was talking about. But we have in this cycle, and that is that the 7-time cycle. We know from 2012 there are 3 little things, and each one is very important. You can count it from February 9, 2012, September 18, 2012, November 14, 2012. And so there's 7 cycles. We are in the middle of this cycle. We just passed the midway point. So many things have happened. So much understanding has taken place. And also some of us begin to feel something change in our DNA. Some changes are being made in our DNA that has taken place from this year. And it takes time to sometimes absorb all that God is doing. Our mind and our soul is just catching up to the things that God is doing in the Spirit. So we are midway here, and then we say by 2020 is our end of first cycle. Then you can see 27, and then 34. And this, we've been talking about these cycles for quite some time. And then we say that the major event, which is Israel 100 years, when it's founded 2048, is very important because it is like roughly in the middle, because it's roughly in the middle of the Antichrist cycle. Antichrist cycle is 13 years. 13-year cycle. And so these are the rough dates that we already have given to you. The Exodus must be finished by 2026. Most likely it will begin around 2021. So we have 5 years of the Exodus. In the years 2021 to 2026, we will be going around like Moses. And many of us, not just me. See, the wonderful thing is not just me. And I will be the leader and coordinator. Many of you will be used by God. In this move, I'm like the trainer. More like your professor. You all are in the university. And I'm training you and graduating you. And so in this move, you are the ones who are going to do mighty works too. Not just one person. And the process is important. And many of us, in fact, many of you will be having your own rod. So think about it. You know, what rod you're going to have. And we have one that we established here by faith. This one came from Istanbul, from one of the altar buildings that the 2nd generation was taken there to pray. I don't know what kind of tree it is. One of those trees that were there. And it's the only altar that we built that was made from earth and sticks, because there were not enough stones. It is permitted. If you look at the book of Exodus chapter 19 and 20, God spoke about 2 types of altar. Altar made from stones that no human have cut, or an altar made from earth. So it was made of earth and sticks to keep the whole thing. And then Israel was led to pick this stick. And so this stick, we're going to leave here and let some of you have it. You can think about your personal stick in the meantime as an act of faith. Say, so some of you are asking, like Ruby, you came to church with a little cane. Where's Ruby? If you want to buy some cane or something for outside, also, I don't think it's a problem. I don't think it's a problem. And something that can be used by God. And then you can put your favorite tree, some cherry blossom. And I think for Pastor Eddie, durian will be very nice. Branch on durian, whatever there is. But by the year 2021 to 2026, many of us will be going with the 3 signs of Moses. And it's almost unbelievable. Say, wow, will we really be doing all those things, in our hearts and our mind? And what would the world be like by then? Remember, we are living in a time of the false prophet and the Antichrist. If you're a modern Christian, not sure about all these miracles, if you don't do it, the Antichrist are doing it. We are living in a time where false signs and wonders will actually come. In the book of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, to save time, I'm not turning to it. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, it talks about false signs and wonders, where the enemy is going to be able to take an animal, a small animal, and turn it into stone. This is almost like the movie fairy tales. But they are going to have the ability. Then we have the ability to undo that part. And they're going to demonstrate things like the magicians that went against Moses. They are going to turn sticks into snakes. So, what do we have if we don't have signs and wonders? They are going to do those things. So if we are not going to be able to challenge them, then something is very wrong with our Christianity by that time. Christianity is no more normal. The false prophet has already been born 2004, Antichrist was born last year. So these are the times that we live in. Now when we look at his cycle, you notice his first cycle that matched us is around 2028. And in 2028, these 3 years, 2027, when with the collapse of USA during that time, remember the collapse of the US starts beginning there, but around that time, and then they have civil war, but civil war is still contained within the country. Then when the entire country collapsed, that's the thing that of the 7 thunders prophecy is about that one. And then in 2029, which is an important thing, we call it the mini Noah, which is the world weather changes. It's earthquake, tsunami, but also radiation from the sun, and a lot of animals will die, plant life will die, and a lot of weak things physically will not survive. It's a mini Noah event, and the world weather changes after that. That's why all the pristine zones have to be established before 2029. So that's the first cycle that's close to where we are. You notice that around this time also, 2026, is the ending of what we call this cycle, my 10-year cycle of power. And then it moves to the next cycle, different things that join with all this. So a lot of things happen 2026, 2027, 2028, 2029. So many things within this sector where the world changes. And 2041 is the rise of the Antichrist, and before 2041, around 2040, about a year before, Satan will hold a major conference with all his fallen angels, and he's permitted by God to rise on the planet Earth. And so everything changes from 2041 in that it becomes a division, a battleground between good and evil, and it's clearly seen. After 2029, the whole planet Earth, more and more people will begin to have open visions. There's also another thing, and this is interesting. You know how God sometimes uses everyone in every area. And I know that some of you are thinking, wow, you see so many visions, wow, Ariel, so many visions, Jehuda, so many visions, you know, the 4, the 12, and all those things, no vision. What about little me? Right? I'm one of those, and I'm sure Alex doesn't mind me talking about that. Alex is Mimi's son. He has some concerns about the downloads, and he always, when fellowship, he tells me this. He says, "Well, you got all these downloads. I feel left out. You know, I feel, you know, am I in God? You know, am I walking?" And then, strangely, he has very interesting. He has 1 or 2 or 3 interesting dreams, and I told him to, you know, these are significant. And one of his dreams, he dreamt he was talking to someone in the U.S. about the prophecies that were happening. And then this is I like to give credit to where credit is due. And so where someone is an instrument to receive certain things. And so this is, I share to encourage every one of you. Don't underestimate your little downloads. And so while Ariel saw the major events in USA, which I also looked into and saw some of the events and added some things. Some things we compare notes, right? We saw the indictment of one of the forerunners of the Democratic Party, and because of emails, and then he saw a stroke of the other contender, and I saw a heart attack. Then we put the two together because I asked the medical doctor. I said, "Are strokes and heart attacks related?" Because we're seeing slightly different things. And then he says, yes, a heart attack can lead to stroke, but stroke can necessarily lead to heart attack. So I believe both things happened, and that took place. And but one of the things that Alex had a dream about was the timing, because both of us are asking, when will these things happen, and clear the way for the young men, not really that young, I mean young in this political age, middle-aged young men, who will be the one to be the last president of the United States. And so when will he rise up? Is our question for both of us. And you know, the Lord never gave us that download. He chose our little Alex. And in his dream, he saw the confirmation of the forerunner of the Democratic Party. This is a dream we're talking about. And then he saw that close to or during or after the confirmation, the prophecy, the second level prophecy about the indictment came about. So what he saw was significant. He saw a timing. So that's why, you know, I've been telling people, I said, no, do not panic, because it will come to pass. And but the Lord chose a dream to give to him. And then he said, hey, you're getting good downloads too now. And then he said, write the downloads to me. And then he wrote some other dreams that he had. And then he had one that I saw. And usually I see something, I wait till somebody else see it, and I want to talk about it. And then he's the only one who saw this. Ariel saw what happened in 2029, or rather, Angel Uriel was talking to Ariel and telling him about something that happened, including the animals that died. But Alex got a second thing that he saw. And he says that in a dream he saw that after 2029, there were not many children born. I said, wow, finally got one person pick it up. And he picked it up. And that's when I said, now I can start sharing about that. Because I need someone else to pick it up also, so that I know that it's not coming just from me. But his was in a dream. So it's interesting. I like keep growing in the Lord and having the downloads from the Lord. But that was important, even though those are just little dreams that are there. Because I saw very extensively that the human race population growth started to stagnate. And then there were less and less children being born. Now in the Bible you'll find prophecies about how so few children are born that when a woman can produce a child is to the envy of everybody else. That's because of the mini Noah. It changes. And there's a lot of mutation and things that affect the human genes so that most humans become infertile. And they find harder and harder. And also God's number of people that God wants to release becomes controlled. Remember, all of them are spirit beings that came forth. But that was what he saw, and that was a confirmation of looking for. And they knew that that was coming. But the significant time is around the time of after 2029. So all this began to change so much. I remember the two fallen angels in 2027 that were active in Noah's time was released. And so 2041 marks the time of a major rise of the Antichrist, and they began to see. Before that, it was all alignment. All these are alignment until 2034 to 2041 is alignment of Russia becoming the leading nation. And a small little war between Russia and China here, and then after that Russia begins to lead. And the world weather is changing. Not just because of pollution of humans, that's part of the cause, but as you know, when people talk about climate change, I say, who is in Mars changing the weather then? Because from what I know, Mars temperature has increased by Celsius too. And the ice caps in Mars are also melting. And there are no, as far as we know, no physical humans are there to pollute Mars. It is a change that is happening in our solar system. And in terms of the radiation of the sun, and all these that are coming forth. And these cycles are measured on tens of thousands of, hundreds of thousands of years that we cannot see the cycle because human life is not that long. And even Bible recorded history is only about 6,000 years. So we know that these cycles have changed so much so that by the time many people can see the spirit world, by 2034 to 2041, everything is all nicely aligned. By 2041, the world is almost at peace and rest. So you have a very great spiritual battle, or the lines of division are clear. By 2041 to 2048, you will know who are of God, who are not of God. But of course, those who are not of God will claim that they are of God. And that will be the challenge for many people. By 2048, which is the year, and which is actually in the middle here, because his cycle is based on 13 years, so it's plus 6.5 years, right? You divide 13 by 2, 6.5. And so when you add between 6 and 7 to 2041, you see 2041 plus 7 is 2048. So it's actually the middle of Satan's cycle, or the Antichrist cycle. And in that period, the apostate church is sealed. In 2048, the Antichrist and the false prophet will for the first time go into Rome, and they will be given the right hand of fellowship by the existing pope at that time. And that pope is already somewhere inside as a cardinal, as you know, all the popes come from cardinals, and not the present pope. The present pope will die off. But that is in 2048. And that seals the apostate church and unites all of them together. Then in 2048 to 2055, in 2055, and you notice 54, 55 are close together, just a year difference, because the 2 years are important. In 2055, the false Messiah emerge. And in 2055, Israel will receive the Antichrist as the Messiah. We also know the dates. And these are all dates that we have given to you by permission from the Lord. It's time to know the dates. Because some of you look, say, you know this one thing, it's not too far, neither too near. But these are real dates in the cycles that are definite. And we talk about predestination and pre-existent. By predestination, some of these things will not change. These are events that will not change. The human beings involved might be different, depending on how we walk with God and how faithful we are. The event will take place just as Jesus will come back again. Just like there is a prophecy in Genesis 15 that the Israelites will go into Egypt. Who will lead them? How he will lead them? Now you know why Joseph at 17 years of age, around book of Genesis chapter 37, was given a dream. Because God was preparing him to be the one to lead the Israelites into Egypt. See, God is interested in the events. And the events had to be fulfilled by humans with free choice. And so God will start giving dreams and all that. Some of you are having dreams and visions, words from the Lord, because you have a role in these events. Because I put these events. You have no role in these events. That's why you know it. That's the enemy. Okay. Your role is up here, the glorious church. That is that. And even last Friday, Friday night, I used this chart. I talked on the different area of New Jerusalem glory growing. But these are events, and whether you are involved. And here's the thing that the Lord also said. Thus says the Lord, those who are chosen to be leaders of particular events, Exodus, times of mini Noah, where they lead and cross over, and places where they're involved here, will definitely be given dreams and visions and revelations like Joseph of old. And to Joseph, the one in Genesis and the one in Matthew, the adopted father of Jesus. The Joseph was given a dream because he was the chosen one to go to bring the people in. He did not know how or the method. The methods could have been different, but the person has already been chosen. And then the person chosen to bring them out, do you think the person had free choice? Yes. But does the person have free choice not to lead? No. Because before Moses could choose, as a baby, God already chose him. Correct. Babies have not exercised free choice yet. The only free choice was to choose to be born from before they came. So did Moses have a free choice that he's going to be the leader of the Exodus? No. No, not exactly. But he had a free choice not to obey. And if he didn't obey, plan B would be operating. Moses 2.0 might not have been called Moses, might have been called something else. So he was Moses 1.0. So the only free choice is to obey or disobey. Some of these things are chosen from heaven. Remember when the apostles asked Jesus, and Jesus' ministry was finishing, and they were thinking carnally, they were thinking of political kingdom. Jesus thinking of eternal kingdom. They said, the two sons of Under, of Boniges, wanted to sit on the right hand and the left hand. Remember Jesus answered. Jesus first asked them, do you think you're able to? And they're so confident, yes, we're able to. Remember what Jesus said? Are you able to be baptized with the baptism in which I am baptized with? And remember, that's the baptism of suffering. That's the baptism of suffering. Can you suffer like I suffer? Can you endure persecution like I endure? See, the baptism of fire is actually a baptism of suffering. So there will be suffering and tears. Because God will turn the tears, in one of the visions Janet saw, God will turn the tears into little jewels. But there's always suffering involved, tears involved in the preparation. And then Jesus said this to them, which is in the Bible. He says, these things are already done and chosen by the Father. That means before you came to earth, these are jobs assigned. So Moses was assigned the job of bringing the people out of the Egypt, our nation of Egypt. But how he was going to do it, the training and the methodology which he has to learn, that one is subject to his free choice and function. He tried to do it 40 years too early, because it was not time yet. Remember, 40 years too early was still not within the 400-year gap. So he has to wait another 40 years. And then he was in the right time and cycle. See, Moses only got three main cycles. Inside the cycle, he got one major cycle. Moses' cycle is measured based on 40 years. 40 plus 40 plus 40. And every time a cycle ends, something changes. Some of the changes could have been different, correct? And when you look, wow, how much free choice in those changes? Well, let's examine. Moses only got 3 cycles, so easy to recognize. He never chose to be brought up by Pharaoh or Pharaoh's daughter. That was something that came about. There was a lot of persecution against the Israelites, and then in the midst of that persecution, a lot of babies were being killed. And so with Moses, the mother just left it to the Lord to preserve. And so Moses, that's why his name was Moses, because he was like drawn out of the reed basket. He was left to float, but God's angels were watching. And then Pharaoh's daughter was there, and somehow one of the 3 generals sort of did something to the water, and it went in the direction towards her. And she adopted Moses. At the end of 40 years, according to the book of Josephus, Moses was a mighty warrior. Mighty in words and in deed. Acts chapter 7 confirmed it in Stephen's preaching. But Acts never talk about what he did in the first 40 years. But history, Jewish history tells us he has led some campaigns, military campaigns, that he has also visited his brethren, so he knew who his real mother was. And he was in touch with the Jews. That's why at the age of 40 he was visiting them. He saw the oppression and all that, and he felt for them, he had empathy for them. And in the midst of all those things, exactly at the end of the 40 years, he killed an Israelite. He killed an Egyptian. And the Bible says in Acts 4, he thought that by standing up for the Israelites, they will recognize he was the deliverer. Apparently he knew he was the one. He accepted his call. But it was not God's timing, nor was it God's method. God's not going to use natural methods. So in the end, he had to flee. How much free choice did he have? I'm sure he had a free choice to visit or not to visit the Israelites. He had free choice to kill or not to kill. He had free choice to run or not to run. All these are free choice. But you can see, as we look at predestination and free choice is a subset of predestination. You can only choose within the framework of your predestination. Moses could not choose whether he will be the one he already chosen. But he could choose within a framework. So free choice is a subset under predestination. We still have free choice. But our free choice is limited to how God made us. Like for example, in our natural state now, in our physical body, we cannot live without oxygen. So you might say, oh, I got free choice, I can go anywhere I want. You can't. If you go into the water to try to breathe, you die. If you go into outer space where there's no oxygen, you die. Not only just because of oxygen, you die based on radiation. So we say humans got free choice. But our free choice is limited by our DNA, our ability to live. We cannot live on a planet like Jupiter. It's not even a solid planet. We're really limited. And you know we have to live in if one day, not enough time anyway, that mankind, maybe Mars possible of, like initial thing, or maybe the moon, we might have enough time for moon base and the Mars base. But we have to bring our own oxygen, bring our own food to survive. And so there are not many planets that we could do that. Even when they discover many planets, all these planets in science we call it you have to find the Goldilocks. The Goldilocks planet. So what is that? Not too cold, not too hot. Just nice. Too near the star, too hot. Too far from the star, too cold. So you got the Goldilocks planet. It has to be just nice where water can be a liquid and where there can be carbon dioxide, oxygen, and all the necessary thing for, they measure, scientists based on physical life. For physical life that exists, it must be, baby bear. I forgot whether Papa bear or Mama bear was too hot, too cold. Which one? But I know baby bear one was just nice. Goldilocks was the one who discovered that in a little parable, little story. And so, we might be able to send some things to Mars and even to the moon, but we have to bring all our oxygen, we have to bring all our food, and all that. We have to create the same early environment to live. So we say human got free choice? Not really. Our free choice is limited by our DNA. And so all free choice is limited by predestination and by your own DNA. Because before you were born, you were given the DNA to fulfill your mission. You're given the exact DNA to fulfill your mission. And we need to flow with that internal DNA. And in spite of thinking we got no free choice, still got free choice. If you ask Moses, he has a free choice to visit Israelite, yes. They have free choice whether you want to kill the Egyptian person or not. He says yes. Now, it might not have happened. This is a different. It might not have happened that way. He might not have killed him. He might just give him a kick and he peng san. Peng san in the Bible, by the way, those of you, is the word means fainted. So one day I was using the word peng san, and then one of the overseas speaker, I forgot who was that. Was it Sewell or Dennis Burke? I think said, "What is peng san?" So the peng san means fainted. Okay. So he might give it a kick and he fainted, and then he ran away. He might not have killed him. So we do not know the story. But however the story goes, however the free choice, he must be taken out of Egypt. That's strange, isn't it? Whether he likes it or not, circumstances will drive him out. Because he's not supposed to be there anymore. I've learned one thing about cycles of life. You must be willing. Which is why, as I enter into 2016, I know 2016 to 2026 is the cycle of power. I really told the Lord, Lord, I'm willing, Remember, I said I am willing. I'm willing to move my base to North America. And the same way in 2006, I said, Lord, I know it's another cycle. I'm sorry that 1996 I never read the cycle. In fact, I only discovered the cycle after I went to Australia. And I examined what went wrong, what happened. And even though a lot of things may be free choice thing, I realized that even if I don't make any mistakes or any free choice, something will still push and keep pushing. But remember what we talked about, predestination and all those things. And I will hold that picture there, but go to another picture. That last week I talked about, I brought forth the subject. Okay. And let's see which one that I was using. Okay, let me use a fresh one. And we talk about my little pen. And I'll use this afterwards. Okay, this is an interesting color. And let me get. And we have our OS and AS. We use black. This is our OS, our original being, and here is our avatar. Avatar here, and we exist here. So we notice that even though we have many free choice in our journey here on earth, we have free choice in our journey on earth, that inside our free choice, God by predestination know every choice that we will make from point A to point B. To God, He sees everything finished. Point A to point B. And let me get the fat pen. Okay. Now, God who knows point A to point B, He intervenes. There is God. Okay. God has no limit, so I draw it from there. There's God. God, and let me give different color for His intervention. Give me a purple color. It looks purplish. Yes. He intervenes at major points. That is, God does, there is A, B, His intervention, we call it C. Remember I talked about the time travel thing last week? That if you could travel back in time, and you can actually alter the future. Because every little thing that you do in the past will change where you are today. But you cannot do too much. Because if too much changes are there, and the changes might affect you and you don't exist now. Like what happened if you go back and then you started inventing something that can move very fast because you got technology. So you put together something that can go very fast like a car, and then because it moved very fast, the time traveler you that went back, and you went too far in the past, you accidentally killed your grandmother. Your rocket car. So your grandmother got killed, you also stop existing. You can never be born. So you cannot overdo things. You can only intervene a little bit and add different things. If you over-intervene, your own existence might be changed, or the whole world might be different. So you go back and you assassinate Hitler, thinking that, wow, the world will be a better place. Right? So you assassinate him. But what you didn't notice is after he was assassinated, another more evil person came. And that guy more clever than him. Mad scientist. Who already got knowledge of nuclear power. So suddenly, the Nazis are the one who won World War II. And then you create a different world. Or it might be the opposite. That the 6 million Jews were not killed. And then they were all spared. But among the 6 million, they spread all over the world, and one of them accidentally ran over your grandfather and your grandmother. Poof! You cease to exist. How are you going to know that among the 6 million they're going to interact with your lineage? You can't predict. So you can intervene, but cannot intervene too much. And we humans, time travel in movies, we sometimes don't know what we are doing. It's all experiment. But with God, there's no mistake. There's no error. So if God knows A to B, and He knows who will become bad, who will become good, correct? Correct. God knows. Then we ask a question. Does God intervene? We discover He did. He intervened when He brought Moses out. Brought Moses out because He knew Moses was going to choose God anyway and follow God. He started intervening before anyone has a choice. He started intervening in his parents' life. And we know He intervened in Noah's life. We know that God also offered, and that's the subject we're going to talk on today. He offered to Moses, when the Israelites were worshipping the golden calf, He said, I will destroy all of them and start fresh from you. Now, God speaks truth. When God made an offer, it was real. It was a possibility. It was another different line that reality could have become. We might not have seen Aaron become the high priest. We might not have seen Miriam. We might not have seen the 12 tribes in that way, because all of them will be wiped out and start with Moses all over again. It was a possibility we never saw. But God made an offer to Moses. That offer constitutes intervention. The only thing Moses never accepted. Because some of you very clever. Say, God knew you're not going to accept. So he made an offer that he knows won't be accepted. Very clever. But it was still real. It was still real. And Moses could have accepted. It was a test on Moses too, whether he would take the route. If Moses had taken the route, all the angels would flow in the route. So we know God intervened, and he intervened sometimes in prophecy by showing forth that there was a guy named Cyrus who's going to be king, and he's going to bring the Israelites, allow the Israelites to go back to their land. He named them. God intervened when he prevented Elizabeth and Zechariah from having a child until their first child was John the Baptist. God intervened all the time. The same with God intervening, and you thought that it's circumstantial. Yes, there are circumstantial causes, but God just watching different things. Now, the story of Job is not a fairy tale. The story of Job was a real event. It was not just a story. It actually took place. Way before Abraham. Job lived way before Abraham. God intervened in a challenge by the devil. But he knew when he intervened, that Job was still going to come out alright. So the only question you ask, but a lot of people died. Yes. Job lost all his children. And when I look back and look at his intervention, this was what I saw. This part is extra biblical. Because would the children have lived on to the end if God didn't intervene? Right? Would they have lived on? Because when God allowed the enemy to attack, in one day he lost all his children. So I was given a chance to peek into that. And this is what I saw. I saw that all his children were going to die, but at different times. Because his children were not like him. They were not godly like him. They were always partying. So instead of them dying in one day, they would die quite fast too, but spread over. So he sort of squashed the couple of years that they're going to die into one day. So his intervention, when he knew all of them going to die, except that they die faster, and it didn't affect the future. I said, wow, God is so smart, so clever. He knows how much to intervene that will not affect the future and the flow of time. God can shorten certain things. Like he shortened the last 3.5 years of the tribulation until it's less than 3 years. Whatever happens going to happen, he just squash it. He can squash time. You know how like sometimes, okay, what happened? You could record my message and play it fast speed. I will speak like Mickey Mouse. Right? But it's still the same thing happened, but it flows within a minute. And one day, this was Israel was showing to me. Israel, he has something where he can speed up the message or Bible reading. Bible reading, yeah, that was what you were doing, Israel. And you know the Bible reading, we all like slow, the Lord said and all this. So he was putting a high speed. I said, I cannot hear that. But he trained himself to hear the Bible reading very fast. so that he can finish hearing the Bible reading, where most of you might take 1 hour, the same passage he finished in half an hour. He speed up, so he trains. Then I have to listen carefully to okay, I think I can hear, I can pick up the words. So there's this software that can speed up the thing. So what all God did when his intervention was speed up the time. The timing of certain things happened, and that's all that he did. Very smart, very clever, only our Father God can do. So we're talking about point C, God's intervention. Cannot be too much. Cannot, I know. So the question is, now that God knows everybody's choice, he start intervening to give a little bit of relief to those who love him. And to block those who hate him, so that they don't cause as much suffering. Otherwise it will be worse. So God has already intervened at point C into our timeline. So understanding predestination, free choice. See, predestination is point A to B in plan A. And then you could have plan A1, A2 to B2, possibility 2. Or A3 to B3. So there are different levels based on free choice. And for every one of them, God can foresee. God can foresee. And he already planned an answer to every choice. To make sure it's still streamlined into that. That's why I call it point A, AN to BN, whatever number you have to put. God already has it. So in terms of signs, we don't just call it, because of free choice, we call it A, N, B, N. The N stands for any number. If A is 1, B is 1. A is 3, B is 3. It can be any number that you add to it. A 2045, then B 2045. C, God already knows everything. He just needs to do just one and intervene. So all possibilities, God can plan it. We're going to look back at this chart, but can we bring the other chart out, like Brother Young? Okay. There we have, in these things that are significant that happened in 2048, is the establishment of the apostate church. 2055 is the Messiah, false Messiah being accepted by Israel. In the year 2055, you know, sometimes it sounds nice in a song. In the year 25, hey, 25, we got no 25. Year 2055 already. The whole world all half dead. So, 2055, the false Messiah is accepted. And for the first time, see, all these years from 2015 to 2055, he never stepped into Israel. Not physically, because he's planning only to step in as 2055. And so the same way, they did not step into Rome until 2048. False prophet and him. And the rapture roughly takes place around 262, 263, around 263. And we don't know the hour or the day, but you know the season. That's what I gave you is the season. And then the last 7 years of the tribulation. And you notice that's the cycle 2067. 2067 is exactly in the middle of the tribulation. That is when the world becomes fully evil. And that's all. His last less than 3 years, and Jesus comes destroy him. Even the battle of Gog and Magog, which many scholars talk about, if you read the book of Revelations, Gog and Magog happened at the end of the millennium. And it looks very funny. But what we understand, and that is only in this move we have been given the understanding, that the battle of Gog and Magog, which happens at the end of the millennium, was taken and thrown back into this time dispensation. Very fast. And it came in several visions. You know how visions are progressive. So when you see some visions you don't understand, I always tell people write them down first. Because you cannot see clearly. So the first time we saw the millennium, we saw that at the end of the millennium, you remember there is a rebellion, Satan was let loose. In the millennium there was no Satan. In fact, all the fallen angels, all the demons already locked up. Antichrist already in lake of fire. Then in the millennium, only good. There was no devil. Devil was locked up for 1,000 years. At the end of the 1,000 years, he was released. And then you saw that he stirred up a rebellion, and the Bible called it Armageddon, Gog and Magog. The one prophesied in Ezekiel. So we look at it, very strange, got rebellion here, rebellion there. But original vision we saw was after the millennium, as Satan gathered all the humans who were actually supernatural humans. Because they lived for 1,000 years. And they rebelled, they choose him, they still choose him. And not all, but some choose him. And all those who choose him, the first vision that we saw was, the moment they choose him, they all disappear, including Satan. Poof. And we call that less than a nanosecond. Then we say, hey, what happened? That's the first time we saw the vision. We saw it happen, the moment they chose him, they all disappeared. Then that was the revelation. We said, wow, God, my God, so fast. Less than a nanosecond, boom, finish. And several weeks later, let me see how long was the time. Really weeks, I think more than a month. Then the download came again about this section. And the revelation about the millennium, let me see what month it was. I know that the revelation of quantum time was in August. Around August 2013. And then the revelation of the millennium was now March. We were in Ayers Rock. So Ayers Rock, and the revelation of Adam and Eve then came down. So it was around just after March. So it was many weeks and many months. Then we saw that the devil and all those who rebelled millennium was taken back in time and thrown into this time, the 3.5 last 3 years, the millennium. So he said, hey, what is that? And in fact, the former prophet asked Enoch, said, what is this? And there was no words. Then in email describing this to me, then I say, Then I think, calculate, then I say, it's called quantum time. Quantum time. And quantum is where the time exists at 2 points and is connected. But on this point, where it touches the future, was a nanosecond. Then it's linked back. And then quantum time exists in 3 areas. This part of the last 3.5 years was also quantum time with the 40 days of rain, when Noah was shut up. So then we saw quantum time, that the times were linked. They are all one time. So you think about it this way. Try to imagine. Think about it as a spiritual battle fought in limited dimensions of time. You know how today when human beings do battle, it's all within space and time. But imagine spiritual forces that fight, and they travel into a time dimension realm, and then you punch the guy, boom, and let me see, any movie they got that? Oh yeah, there was a movie I think with the Avengers, and then they were fighting transdimensionally, and there was Thor who was supposed to be from another dimension, and then they gave a punch, and boom, he disappeared from the earth and landed in another planet, another dimension. And then something happened, they fight, and then boom, they came back to the earth dimension. I think that part has the London or something like that. They go in and out trans-dimension. So that's how you imagine it, that the fight was trans-dimension. But God limit the dimension to 3 time zones. 1 nanosecond in the future, roughly 3 years in the year 2067 to 2070 of the tribulation,
and 40 days in the time of Noah. So they can fight, but they cannot go out of those dimensions. So can you imagine? They don't actually do that, just for imagination. So you can imagine, Archangel Michael go, and then one of the fallen angels go, all the way back to Noah's time. And then they go, let's fight back. And then they come the forces back. So the dimension is limited within that dimension flow. That is that. And so imagine the kind of fight that was going on. And so that was a significant time. And today, when Deborah came, he was telling me, in 2067, it's exactly 100 years from 1967, the 6-day war, where Israel took Jerusalem. Significant, isn't it? Of course, when Israel took Jerusalem, that is a big thing. I remember those years. It was a big thing. And people are talking about something spiritually has taken place. Israel finally had Jerusalem. And they're not letting go since then. Exactly 100 years from that. Because everything happened around Jerusalem. Even Jesus says, a prophet cannot die except in Jerusalem. So he went to Jerusalem to die. And the same, Enoch and Elijah, they also died in Jerusalem for 3 days. So Jerusalem is significant. And that is exactly 100 years since 1967. Every event. So when you look at world events today, you realize there's a time span. Now from Moses' time, we realize Moses got 3 cycles. Every one of you has a cycle. Your cycle might be linked to certain calendars. Loved ones going home, significant cycles in your life, time periods. At the end of the cycle, and the peak time of your cycle, very important. To listen carefully and remember, this is called the point C. God is the intervention. If your heart is good and you love God, no matter what you do, God still makes sure it flows. That is God's intervention. Whatever free choice you make, when you think it's a mistake, look at how many mistakes were involved when Joseph was sold by his brothers to Egypt. A lot. Joseph himself made some mistakes because he was actually bad-mouthing his brother. So when they came, they were really angry. Jacob and Rachel and all the other mothers, Jacob did not love the children equally. That was a big mistake also. That caused strife in the children. If you have 12 children, you must love all of them equally. He did not. He made Joseph his favorite. Now, how will the other children feel? Everything, wow, here's a nice coat, Christmas present. Then the rest. How are the other children going to react? You see, mistakes by Jacob, favoritism. Mistake by Joseph. Mistake by his brothers. One brother wanted to rescue him, the oldest, Reuben. Remember, they actually want to kill him. He almost got killed. They talked about killing. They wanted to kill him. You know, when you look back how foolish they are, they actually are going to kill the one that's going to save them. And so the story is very funny. Because if they actually had killed him, so God prevented that. Reuben must have been distracted by Lord and said, let's not kill him. Let's just put him here first. And because when he said that, he wanted to come back and rescue him from the other brothers. Then, while he went away, the other brothers were talking and Joseph was down there. And if you read carefully all the cross references, he was literally bawling his eyes out, crying. It must be his lowest moment. I mean, he felt like, he's going to die. Then, some Ishmaelite traders came. Another group of brothers said, hey, he's still killing him, let's make some money. Oh, it must be the businessman in them talking. Killing him, nobody profit, let's profit. They sold him for 20 pieces of silver. What they didn't understand is this. They never anticipate the father will react the way. Because from that day on, the father had sorrow. The whole family changed. Say sometimes when you do things out of anger, you don't realize your own reaction. In 40 years of ministry, I've seen this. It is not the actions or mistakes of people that destroy. People are stronger than that. It is the reaction to the mistakes. It is always a secondary reaction. Because the mistakes by themselves, God will deal with every mistake. But it's the reaction to the mistake. And then you got first reaction, second level reaction, third level reaction, fourth level reaction, by then nuclear explosion. It's always the reaction that destroys more than the original action. We need to learn from that. So we have an understanding of all these charts, and what we're going to see is how do we fit into these predestined events. Events that cannot be changed, cannot be altered. Now you notice if the Antichrist had been born 1 year earlier, this cycle would not be. Or 1 year later, this whole thing will be not in the middle of the tribulation. It's exact and precise. When you look at it, how God control time, control events even in our time, when you think that God is not in control of the world. The God, our mighty, almighty God, is still in control of every detail. When you think you've lost control, when you think the situation is out of control, God is always in full control. He's never allowed the enemy to try beyond the boundary line that he did not allow. That is a relief for all of us. Let's go back to this chart and cube. And we look at my little drawing here. Okay. Now we see that God is intervening at point C all the time. He's intervening at point C. What I want to redo is instead of looking at your OS and your AS as OS and AS, original self and avatar self, what we need to see, let me look at a different color to look at it. Okay, let's try this color. Okay, there is that. Okay, it looks different. And there is your AS. I just draw it here since it's like a space. Let's not, there is a link between the two. I've not touched much about this link, but there is a link between the two. And I'm not going to use the word OS and AS now. Just for, because remember, spiritual things need many metaphors to describe. One metaphor is not enough to describe a spiritual reality. So I need to use another metaphor. And this metaphor is this. This is the, what I call the program. The computer program. This is the program running. This is where the data programming takes place. This is where the program lives out its life. Two are connected. Your OS is like a set of computer programs. It is who you are, what you're supposed to be. It's all programmed in your existence. We call the original program the version 1.0 of yourself. Usually in computer language, you have version 1, 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. In between that, they make small little improvement. So they have 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. But when it's a major change, they use 2.0 and 3.0. Alright. So there is a version 1.0 of yourself up here. The original plan. We call that your book. The book of life. Now for that, let me throw all the scriptures in, and then I'll touch more in the second service. But in the first service, I want to make sure that you know that I quote from scriptures. When you check under the word book, you realize in the book of that there are different books that are there. I like to differentiate the book of life from the other books. There is the book of Remembrance mentioned in Malachi chapter 3, and the book of Memorial mentioned in Exodus chapter 17, when Joshua defeated the Amalekites with Moses lifting up his hands. God said, write it down in a memorial book and then read it to Joshua constantly. You know why? God was training Joshua. That was among the first battles that he fought. And remember, he is trained to be a fighter. He's supposed to go and conquer the promised land. And something important, God made it to be written down. So there's a book of remembrance and memorial. And also when David talked about how he keeps our tears in a bottle, all of them represent the book of remembrance and memorial. Say, what is that book? The book of Remembrance and Memorial is a book that archives the great achievements and great choices you made on earth. It's celebrated in heaven. Remember how it says, even the angels rejoice when one sinner is saved? Now, why should they rejoice if they really expect it? They just have to check the book. Oh, according to here, on Earth time, February the 10th, 2012, they will be born again. So they're all looking. Normal. It came to pass. And then if they've been looking at it for thousands of years and everything came to pass, where's the rejoicing? But the possibility of it not coming to pass is great. So when it actually comes to pass, the angels rejoice. How do angels rejoice? How do angels rejoice? You see, there are a lot of things that we don't know. Do you know angels don't have to fight? You know, even the angels got sword. You will never find a single angel crossing sword with a fallen angel. They didn't go like Star Wars. And Michael the Archangel takes firing sword. You know, and he has to be white color, green color, blue color, and then the enemy all red color. No, their sword, when they live up, that's enough. There is never a place for crossing sword. Because they amplify the energy of God. So angels have to just stand and worship God, and that's a battle. So we learn from that. No kung fu fighting, kicking, crane, or praying mantis, or whatever that is. So whatever, none of all these things. They just energize the God, and then they live up whatever God has. And that's all. And one day we will learn, when God starts using the rod, that when you lift up the energizing of the rod, it amplifies the energy God has. That's why you notice one thing that Moses did. He has to lift up the rod. Why? That was the way you find. Now you come to this area, which I hope help you. It is important to lift up our hands. Test it out. If you lift up your hands 15 minutes a day, or intercessors, I know sometimes the hand get tired. Then do what Moses said, do the put stone under here, stone under there. If you do it 1 hour a day, over a period. No, don't do one day and then come and check it didn't happen. I'm talking about over a period of time. See the difference. Over 1 month, over 2 months, for 1 year. Has anybody done it for 1 year? 1 year, lifting up your hands, 1 hour a day. 1 year, anybody? Anybody online? No, I don't see anybody online too. Try it out. It will be the difference between riding a bicycle and sitting on a rocket. Some of the simplest truth in the Bible are not applied by us. You know, you'll say, Lord, where's your power? Where's your power? Where's your power? Right in front of you. Say, where? Beside you. If you only do it consistently, didn't the Bible say, read about lifting our hands? The lifting our hands is like the evening sacrifice. Why does the Bible exhort in the book of Hebrews? It says, lift up your hands that hang down. Why does Paul mention in Timothy chapter 2 that I will that men everywhere pray with hands lifted up? Now you notice something that now I say, then you will notice. It's there all the time. You know one difference in Catherine Kuhlman's ministry when she ministered? She always lifts up her hands. Watch those old videos. She's always lifting up her hands. See, sometimes we accidentally tap on some power we don't know. And then nobody taught you, but you know, it is something that you tap on, like meditation or whatever thing. But the simple act of lifting our hands, you got so many Bible records, correct? Exodus chapter 17. Moses' hand go down, Joshua start running. Moses' hand go up, he start winning. Hey, what do you think is happening? It's an amplification of the power of God. Which means that if your power is 10 volts, you lift up, it might feel like 100 volts. If your power was 100 volts, you lift up, it might have been like 1,000 volts. It amplifies. There's an amplification that's taking place. Simple act of lifting up hands. So, there is a memorial, then there is the book of life. And I have just enough time to turn to Exodus chapter 32, and we'll touch more on the second service. Exodus chapter 32, just to show you the book of life. And then the others I will quote, but I'll get the exact verses later on in the second service. When God was speaking to him in Exodus chapter 32, this is the prayer that Moses prayed in verse 32. Yet now, if you will forgive their sin, but if not, I pray, blot me out of your book, which you have written. Now this is called the book of life. In the book of Psalms, it refers to that as the book of the living. I've seen the book, and let me describe what the book is. Because the life of God is so precious, when God breathed out His life to create spirit beings, there's a record. So if like one portion of the life went and create 1 million beings, every one of the 1 million is recorded. Okay. All. Because God's life is very precious, it's uncreated. And His uncreated life gave us life. So the book of life is actually the record of God's life being breathed out to create entities. So that is originally from God. The Bible says in the book of Revelation, several times we will quote it in the second service, the Antichrist can only affect those who are not written in the book of life. The mark of the beast only affects those who are not in the book of life. The book of life is referred to also at the ending of the book of Revelation. If anyone adds or subtracts it, so their portion will be taken from the book of life. See, you see this taking. Now, when Moses made the offer, take me out of the book of life, God says he will not do it. And verse 33, whoever has sinned against me, I will blot him out my book. Which means that based on point A to point B, every life is recorded. But between point A and point B, a person can be blotted out. What happens if you're blotted out? You are no more sustained directly by God's life. And because life in itself is still there, and God hasn't absorbed it back. See, God can absorb that life back and sort of, it's all energy. But God left it, and it's a life cut off from God. The connection is cut off. Otherwise, it's connected. And that life becomes changed in the darkness. And then God has his time frame when he takes that back. But that life continues to exist in its own darkness. That's what the devil was. And that's what fallen angels are. That's what demons are. And then when between that dark life, a dark life and the dark life can produce other dark lives. Which is why when the fallen angels made with fallen humans, they produced giants. And the giants were wondering, are we safe? In the book of Enoch, all the giants discovered they are not safe. Because darkness plus darkness never equals light. They have some level of consciousness, but they are all doomed. And they were actually half human, half angels. These were the giants. And they have some measure of free will, but it's darkness. Their DNA is not in the book of life. So it's not safe. And so when we look at that, let me go back to the chart here. Okay. What we learn is that there could be 2.0. When Jesus went up, he became 2.0. Something was added. So there are some things that can be released by God. God says, it is from God. God says in Philippians 2, let every knee bow, every tongue proclaim he is God. So it came from God. So anything coming from God can make it 2.0, 3.0, etc. When we all enter new heaven and new earth, it's 3.0. Just as an illustration. Because everything is different. Otherwise the word new is not new. New means it's different from the old. It's 3.0 when you cross new heaven. Or whatever number you want. Now, the problem is this. Just as God can affect that life, and that life affects the earth. Let me use a different color so you won't be confused. Life on earth can affect this life. It can affect us into like 1.1, 1.2 minus or whatever. So it can affect back this life such that it can even wipe us from the book of life. So there's an interaction between the life that is there and the life that is here. And here's the thing. This computer program that is there can be affected by here. And by effect, I mean it reduce. We talk about the reduction that is there. Then it reduces to the point where it crosses into the line of sin. Then God says, okay, it now doesn't belong to me. I'll use it for judgment. And we need to understand that all the programming is done up there. Our avatar is still an avatar. It's run by the program there. What we need to learn is this. There are some things in which we can effect, because between 1.0 to 2.0, it came into point A to point B. Okay, let me use a different color. Right, red, yes. that 1.0 we started, and then because the right choices are made, it affects back the programming and increase and improve. Today we are not at the technology level where we can understand, but you can understand it when you study AI. AI is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is where a program can reprogram itself based on its feedback. It's self-taught and self-learning. It's programmed to learn, programmed to gather experience. And the more experience it gathers, the more it can react in artificial intelligence. Of course, the greatest intelligence God created is us, humans. But we humans create something that I can illustrate with, like say a metaphor. So artificial intelligence today is based on like the feedback loop, and then the feedback loop can actually change its internal program and benefit and add to its program. So it learns, it is a learning program. It cannot learn like we learn, but it can learn. Our technology is not so clever yet, but watch. If technology continues to increase, the programs will become so clever. Like remember the first GPS? Clumsy like anything. Today GPS so clever. And you got GPS that even has update of traffic jams. So the GPS, sometimes my GPS, which is the Garmin one in Australia, they will tell you to take a different route. I say, wow, this is GPS. Why does it take a normal route? And it's because it was programmed to react to traffic jams. But normally it's the normal path. But it's telling you, take this road. And you're wondering, why take this road? Because it was programmed to avoid the traffic jam. And if the traffic jam, let's say, is half an hour, it will then direct you a different road. I don't know whether your GPS is clever. But it's getting more smart. Because of feedback loop, it can react in a program. And what we need to understand is there are different types of reactions that is important, which I touch on in on the miracle service night. That I just re-show that part. So let's see. Okay. Did I touch the miracle service part? Yes, I did. Here it is. Okay. I call that two realities. The spiritual reality and the natural reality. And both realities need to merge. And the merging of the two realities are based on these 3 points. Based on 2 Corinthians chapter 3 verse 18. So I'd like to end with that verse. That it says in 2 Corinthians chapter 3 that as we behold Him, as we mirror, we become the mirroring of His image, then we are transformed into the same image. So 3 things take place. Number 1, mirroring. Behold as in a mirror is the word mirroring. When we mirror Him, that means the image is there, we are transformed, and then we are changed to the same image. Exactly like here. So if we could, and I put it bigger, if we could mirror Him, if His image could come clearly, and I call that resonance or frequency, because light is a frequency, that if that frequency can affect this frequency, let's say if our OS affect our OS, and this is a frequency, when this becomes the right frequency, and what I didn't have time to touch on miracle service is this, it can reach critical mass. At critical mass, it begins to change and transform. Between point 1 and point 2 is called critical mass. Critical mass is like when you keep having something and having something and having something and something, it begins to change you. At first, it's not enough to change you. Like if you eat junk food once a month or several times a month, but you eat it 3 to 6 times a day, you get the story of the guy who lived on McDonald's for 1 year, right? Remember how he nearly died? Nearly died. But then, It is a cheap source of protein and food also for the poor countries, right? And it might be the only meat. So for them, it might not affect much because that is only once in a while. And they could use every one of the fat and every one of the protein inside them because they hardly have meat. But if you put yourself on that diet for 1 year, you might die in 2 years. You nearly die. And the same way, there's a critical mass of tolerance in our physical body. So there's a critical mass of tolerance in our physical body, in any area. So we need to be able to understand that whatever we resonate, one day it comes. God kept telling Abraham, you will have a son, you will have a son. When he finally came, he came. For him, 20 years. For the woman with the issue of blood, she'd been trying to get healed. And one day she kept hearing about Jesus. She must have several levels of reaction. First time she hears, she may say, Second time, Third time, oh. Fourth time, I need to go and see him. Fifth time, I must really see him. Sixth time, you say, I must see him now. So there might be several levels of reaction. So you reach a critical mass where something was just right and she was healed instantly. Everything that God has spoken to you is true. Every download is true. Everything of the spiritual realities is true. But that spiritual reality must produce this physical reality. And for this physical reality to do it, is the process of tuning. This world needs tuning. Your life needs tuning. My life needs tuning. Our environment needs tuning. Allow the tuning to take effect. Every day when you read the Bible, every day when you go through your downloads, every day when you see the visions, every day when you pray over the prophecies, every day when you look at it, you are retuning, retuning. And one day it builds a critical mass, such energy. Remember what a tsunami is. It's a critical mass of water so strong, created by underwater earthquakes that sweep everything in its path. And you have been in strong waves before, swimming underground. It just carries you. But yet, if the waves are not there, you could swim. Or the waves are very weak, you could swim against the waves if you're a good swimmer. But when the wave reaches certain critical mass, no amount of paddling is going to change the direction of the wave. So critical mass is important. Critical mass of the spiritual reality in our lives. Which is why we need to soak ourselves in visions, in revelations, and live in it as a reality until that reality becomes the reality of the physical world. And it will take place. Let's go to God in prayer. Father, we thank you for your grace and your mercy upon our lives. We ask that you continue to transform us. But we know, Lord, there are stages of transformation. And we know, Father, that the real programming is in heaven. And we need to allow all the details of the program to resonate in our avatar. So that our choices are influenced by them. So that everything that we do is influenced indirectly by the program that is running inside us. The life cycles, the events, the decisions, the subconscious level. Father, we want Jesus to be full in our life until we are fully transformed and we can say we are doing His will on earth as in heaven. So bless each one here, Father, and we pray, Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Thank you for giving each one their daily bread, their daily portion. Lead us not into temptation, Father. Forgive each one of our trespasses and sin. Things, O Lord, that we go through in our life because of imperfection. As we forgive those who sin against us. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever, Father. and let it be so for each life. In Jesus' name, and everyone say, Amen. Praise God. God bless you, and we continue in the second service.